I have some very important information pertaining the next raid boss in Pokemon Go. On Saturday, July 7th, Articuno will be returning for a 3-hour period in Pokemon Go. During this period of time, you will have the chance to catch a shiny Articuno. Naturally, you'll want to know what the best counters are to Articuno. What I've discovered recently in my research is that there is only one true counter to Articuno, and that is Down Tyranitar. This is a graph showing the DPS of Articuno's best counters. They're all at level 40, and they all have a great friendship tier. Tyranitar, at level 40, is far more powerful than all of them. By level 34, Smackdown Tyranitar is more powerful than a weather-boosted Moltres. By level 29, Tyranitar is better than the Legacy Rock Throw Rock Slide Omastar. By level 26, it's basically better than any reasonable weatherless option to the raid. At the extremely low level of 23, it's performing as well as the majority of Articuno's counters. At level 23. The other counters here, this Moltres, that Raikou, that Entei, they're all at level 40. This is a level 23 Smackdown Tyranitar. And just for clarity, I included Water Gun, Rock Blast, Omastar there at the end, just to show how much the Rock Throw Legacy move matters for its DPS, and Aggron's there as kind of a frame of reference. The main takeaway to get from this data here is that at level 29, Smackdown Stone Edge Tyranitar is the best counter, hands down, to Articuno. Better than basically everything at level 40. Now, I'm not talking about Tyranitar. Tyranitar is level 29. Everything else is level 40, and it's better than them. Weather boosted Moltres cannot compare. Now, if you're a fan of my usual swaggy graphs that include total damage output, here is that information and more plotted on a graph. So the x-axis is total damage output, which is a more useful metric for tankiness, and then the y-axis is still DPS, damage per second. You can see on this graph that Entei's tankiness allows it to have a total damage output that is on par with a level 40 Smackdown Tyranitar, but the DPS just isn't there. As far as scaling on this graph goes, usually the difference in DPS from the best and the worst options is about 5. To put this into perspective, a Raikou would be where Tyranitar is against a Kyogre raid, and a Kyogre with Thunder would be where Entei is, which is like snail speed but very tanky option. Because Tyranitar sets the bar so high for DPS, very good options such as Entei are seen as slow compared to him. And really good options such as Golem and Raikou and Flareon and Moltres are just seen as just diminutive. Smackdown Tyranitar is 100% the Pokemon you want to use for this raid. Now, if you're wondering how many Smackdown Tyranitars you're going to want to power up for the Articuno raid, I'd say about 3 to 4. The reason for this is Tyranitar will faint in an Articuno raid roughly every 25 seconds. So if your goal is to only use 3 Tyranitars, then you're going to want to beat the raid boss in 75 seconds. If we can assume that the average DPS of your fellow raiders is going to be at least 17, and that your DPS is going to be at least 20 with your Smackdown Tyranitars, then it'll take roughly 10 raiders to defeat Articuno within 75 seconds.
Oh. Math city, bitch. Math city, bitch. 10, 10, 10, 20 equals 50, bitch.
Give or take. Given that 10 raiders is a pretty reasonable number, I think 3 will definitely seal the deal for you. And if the raid is short, you only have like 5 people, you're still going to complete it, especially with the DPS of Smackdown Tyranitar. The collective DPS a group needs to defeat a tier 5 raid boss is roughly 42. Smackdown Tyranitar is dealing 20 DPS. It's almost doable without weather. And if you're curious, if you've got partly cloudy weather during this 3-hour period of time, you will be able to duo Articuno with SmackDown Tyranitar, starting at level 30. If you want a 100% chance of duoing Articuno with partly cloudy weather, then you should power up to level 35. It reaches another breakpoint there, which makes it that much more powerful. If you're curious about what breakpoints you have to meet for your own specific Tyranitars to achieve all this, I have a link to Don's calculator in the description. And if you don't know what a breakpoint is, then link to a guide on breakpoints in the description. Just to clarify, Bite Stone Edge and Iron Tail Stone Edge Tyranitars do not compare. Looking back at the graph, Iron Tail Tyranitar performs around 17 DPS, and Bite Tyranitar will perform around 16 DPS. So it really is the SmackDown that makes it for this raid. Now if you're unfortunate and you missed out on the SmackDown Tyranitar Community Day event, then fortunately Pokemon Go is a collaborative game. The metric that I just gave you guys for the 75-second raid clear with 10 members is based off of 17 DPS of the other raiders. And I feel 17 DPS is something that you can achieve with the majority of Articuno's not SmackDown Tyranitar counters. While it is a significant drop in DPS from those that do have SmackDown Tyranitar, Pokemon Go is a collaborative game. Your individual performance has benefits that are scaling based on how many people you're playing with, so it's kind of nebulous. In particular, trying to search out the shiny Articuno, shiny raid bosses have up to this point been auto-catchable. The moment you hit them with a ball, you caught it, so if you miss out on a damage ball or two because you aren't using SmackDown Tyranitars, then you're in luck. The only Articuno that you really want to catch from this is shiny, and you're going to catch it with one ball no matter what. Don't feel bad about yourself. You will not be slowing down the raid at all. The only difference between one raider not using a SmackDown Tyranitar out of a group of people that are is like collectively maybe 5 seconds. So I didn't do math on that, but if 17 DPS makes it so that 10 people can beat it in 75 seconds, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Hopefully the ridiculousness of this SmackDown Tyranitar and people that do not have SmackDown Tyranitar will prompt Niantic to give us opportunities to get Community Day moves on Pokemon outside of the Community Day period in the future. I don't expect it to happen super soon, but I think it is something that will be on their mind going forward. Also, if you're curious about Moltres and Zapdos, which are the reasonable next unlockable raid rewards in Pokemon Go, Moltres is, like Articuno, completely dominated by SmackDown Tyranitar. Zapdos, on the other hand, Golem is still a super good option against it. SmackDown Tyranitar is going to have more DPS than Golem against Zapdos, but because Golem is part ground type and has that tankiness against the electric type attacks, Golem is still going to be a very excellent option for that raid. Outside of these legendary bird raids, SmackDown Tyranitar isn't that insane. So it's just because SmackDown Tyranitar is getting this doubled up super effective damage against the Ice, weak to Rock, and Flying, weak to Rock, Articuno, and the Fire, weak to Rock, and Flying, weak to Rock, Moltres. That's why SmackDown Tyranitar is just so crazy insane here. But yeah, going forward, you're definitely going to want to have a couple SmackDown Tyranitars powered up. So 100% advise powering up 2 to 3 SmackDown Tyranitars. With that, you will be golden for any flying type raid boss from probably now until the end of time, barring extreme game mechanic changes. I hope you found this information useful. If you want more raid information like this in the future, then subscribe to SwagTips. I put out information like this pretty regularly. If you have any questions about this content that you want answered, comment below, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you got a SmackDown Tyranitar for these upcoming raids. And if you didn't, hey man, don't feel too bad. 17 DPS isn't bad, and it's just this Articuno and this Moltres raid that makes SmackDown Tyranitar just insane. Going forward from that, you're going to be fine. I really hope Niantic gives us the opportunity to get these exclusive moves again going forward in the future, especially when they're as meta relevant as Down Tyranitar is. SwagTips. I really hope I've been doing screen share. I have been. Nice.